All right, everyone, welcome to today's session, Gone with the Wind. Our goal for today is to cover everything related to insurance in regards to hurricanes, flood, wind mitigation. I don't know about you guys, but there are a lot of topics I feel really comfortable speaking with my clients about, and unfortunately, insurance is not one of them. And it used to be pretty straightforward, right? You'd get into a transaction, it came time to discuss insurance, you'd connect them with an insurance agent, and they'd take the wheel and it would be pretty straightforward. But unfortunately, things in the industry are changing pretty dramatically. Coverage options, including stipulations for standalone policies for all of the things we just mentioned, can be quite confusing, and it can put quite a wrench in a transaction if you don't find out about them until you are already under contract. So today, we're aiming to address all of those things so we can educate ourselves and set our clients up for success. To do this, we are joined by Josh Baugus of OpenWindow Home Inspections. If you don't know him yet, let's change that. You being here today is step one in that, but if you haven't connected, be sure to reach out to him after. Josh is an incredible inspector. He's a preferred vendor with us for so many reasons, but especially this right here. He wants to show up and be a resource to both us as agents and to our clients, and doing trainings like this is a huge part of it. So if you ever have any questions, reach out to him directly. We're also joined by Sean Adams of SJ Adams Inc. He is an insurance agent himself. We know that conversations like this can be a little confusing, and we want to make sure we are answering all of your questions, and we're setting ourselves up for success by having a number of professionals in the room today. So bring your questions. Let's get those answered. You know how I always say it, but if you've got that one, then I'm sure a number of other agents do as well. So thank you both for being here today. I really appreciate your time.
Yes,
No problem. Thank you.
absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. Definitely. Thank you. I love getting on these Zooms. And one of the biggest things that I am really focusing on this year and the next coming years is building a network. And it's not just for home inspections, it's for the agents, the insurance companies, the everybody that has to deal with that selling and buying of real estate property, whether it be residential or commercial. So I've built started building a relationship with Sean Adams for the past year or so. I think we've been. Oh, you're muted.
I think it's about 3 years now. So
Okay.
it's hard to
Well,
believe it's
wow.
been that long.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
has been that long. So that's why I've asked Sean Adams to come back on here and really help out with this. With when it comes to damage with homes, they are a lot more knowledgeable when it comes to that side of things after the inspector or whatever happens. So this presentation is called Gone with the Wind. And no, we're not talking about the movie. We're talking about everything you as a realtor need to know when a home has been through a storm. So hurricanes, flood, high winds, and kind of everything in between, because that's what we get anywhere in the Raleigh area, all the way over to the coast, and just kind of actually the entire state now, especially what happened last year. So um, we will be tag teaming this session with Sean, and you'll be hearing from him shortly. I've got some questions intertwined with what I've got going on, and feel free to stop and speak up. It's hard for me to keep up with what I'm presenting and everybody raising their hand or having questions on the chat. So please feel free to interrupt. I don't mind. It does not bother me at all. So after that, we'll wrap up with some questions, and then I'll hand this over to Sean, and he's got some fantastic things on the insurance side as well. So my part will run about 20, 30 minutes. I practiced the other day, and it was about 25 minutes. So we're going to be focused on what inspectors actually look for after the storm, how we assess damage, and what gets documented, and how you can help your clients avoid costly surprises or worse, deals falling apart. So let's dive in and see how we can keep your clients protected, informed, and confident even after the worst of it hits. So storms are no longer a once in a decade problem. They're becoming part of every agent's reality. Over the past decade, North Carolina has faced numerous devastating storms, with Hurricane Helene in 2024 causing an estimated $59.6 billion in damages and resulting over 100 fatalities. This underscores the increasing frequency and severity of such events in our state. and it is becoming more and more frequent. Storms don't kill deals, it's the confusion that does. And confusion comes from not knowing what to expect, not knowing what was damaged, and not having the right team around the table to handle it. Floods, high winds, and hurricanes. Storm cause both obvious and hidden damage, often some at the same time. For example, a roof can look intact, but lifted at the edges from the wind. So that entire structure could have been lifted up and then set back down, which really that's a structural integrity. So buyers rely on you. This is where you as the agent become the steady hand. Clients look to you for clarity, confidence, and when things feel uncertain. And then the inspection insights. With the right inspector, you can turn unknown into clear next steps. What you don't want is an inspector just saying what's wrong. You and your clients should be getting the implications and the documentation that can help with insurance, repairs, or even price negotiations. And this is actual radar picture that I found. I thought was pretty cool. So this presentation is short and to the point, designed to give you practical tools and insights you can actually use in storm-prone transactions. Here's what we'll be covering today. Damage assessments. It's what you'll look for after the storms and what most people miss. High-risk hazards, the issues that can delay or kill deals if not caught early. Documentation, which Sean will definitely help us on as well. How to capture and present findings that support buyer and claims. Repair guidance, helping clients understand what's urgent and what's cosmetic. Mitigation strategies, how to protect future value with smart upgrades. And then Realtor game plan, how to work with inspectors like us to stay in control post-storm. So the bottom line is about giving you the clarity in the chaos so you can keep your clients informed and confident no matter what weather brings. So let's talk about what buyers and even sellers are really dealing with after major storms. They're not just walking through a home anymore, they're walking through uncertainty. Is this damage new or is it old? Will insurance cover this? What does this mean for closing timelines or repair budgets? They're flooded with questions, literally and figuratively. And this is where your value shows up. Most buyers and sellers have never navigated a post-storm transaction before, but you have. Your ability to stay calm, ask the right questions, and surround your clients with the right professionals is everything. It keeps deals from blowing up. We help clarify the physical condition of the home, but on the insurance side, that's where Sean's role becomes crucial. So, Sean, maybe you can speak to how early engagement with insurance, even before making an offer or putting one on a home, before putting a home on the market, can change how clients prepare and negotiate.
I'll be happy to help. So one of the big things to think about with storm season during the summer, when a storm gets what's called in the box, so if it gets from Miami all the way to Cape Hatteras out to Bermuda, all the insurance companies will basically stop their agents from running new business. So that's a big thing. So make sure that your client is getting a quote in advance and locked in. Otherwise, it can be an issue. And also, if that closing is another thing to think about too. If there's a storm, that closing attorney probably is not going to be meeting with the customer to get that closed. So that's another thing to think about. And it doesn't matter who the carrier is, what relationship they have. If the insurance agent binds a coverage and the company says no, that insurance agent is on the hook totally for that policy, which I'm not going to pay out of my own pocket. So that's one of the things to look at, especially with storm season coming up. I do have some slides. I didn't know if you want me to start with that, Josh, with some more stuff, or if you wanted me to, I didn't know how your presentation about the end, or go more detail about what they're looking for.
Yeah, I've got 12 slides here, and then once I'm done, I'll hand that over to you. That way you can go more in depth into the insurance side.
Yeah, more in depth, but that's one of the biggest things with summer that a lot of times gets realtors kind of scared, is that blackout period. And once the storm gets in the box and it has to be a named storm, that's one of the things that's kind of different too. So if there is a named storm, all the insurance companies will cut off writing new business. That also can affect flood policies and wind. And the other thing too is that blackout period lasts until usually about 5 or 6 business days after the storm has left.
Oh, okay. So it could
That's
be,
another thing to get some, even though that, hey, the storm's gone. Well, the insurance company wants to make sure they're not going to be getting on to somebody else's damage. Does that help
wow.
him?
Wow. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that definitely could hinder many different types of things going on with real estate at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality is storm zones bring unique risk under, so understanding flood zones, wind damage, roof age, coverage limitations, it's a lot. But clients don't need to be the expert. They need you to be the connector, talking to agents. Um, you help them find the clarity and the confidence in the chaos. And when you're proactive, you protect deals from falling apart. You earn trust and you keep everything moving forward, even when emotions are high. And that's why Sean and I are both here to back you up every step of the way. Where am I at here? Sorry, difficulties here. There we go. All right. So, understanding storm damage. When most people think of storm damage, they picture the dramatic stuff like roof shingles gone and standing water or trees through the window. But as inspectors, we're trained to look beyond the obvious. A lot of real risks show up in the aftermath. So, here are four main categories that we focus on after major storm comes through. Excuse me. Wind damage. This includes lifted shingles, damaged flashings, soffits pulling away, or subtle roof deck separation, which means again the structure of the roof has separated from the home. You may not see it from the ground, but it can compromise the entire structural system. Water intrusion, flooded crawl space or basement, roof leaks and moisture that seeps into insulation or behind drywall. Even small water entry point can lead to mold, rot, or foundation issues down the line. Debris impact, so falling branches, big trees, flying materials, or pressure damage from wind-driven objects. This often leads to hidden cracks in siding, window seals, and even structure. Hidden delayed issues. This is a slow creep where you get your mold growth behind the walls or the corroded electrical components, warped framing. This can develop over weeks and derail closing if they don't pop up in a re-inspection. So our role is to help uncover these issues early, document them properly, and give your clients a clear path forward, whether that's requesting repairs, negotiating, or to the last resort, which nobody wants, is walking away. This is where having the right inspection team and your own team, not just the inspection, but insurance, your broker, and just having that team all around you, that really matters. No one should just be looking to check boxes. They should be looking for stuff that could blow up the deal if it's missed or ignored. So high risk hazards to flag. When we inspect homes after a major storm, there are a few hazards that immediately grab our attention because they're the kind that can silently kill a deal if they're not flagged early. Mold being the number one thing. Most agents are good at spotting mold. It's visible, it smells, buyer freaks out when they see it. It's important, but it's also one of the more obvious hazards. Roof and water intrusion. This is another area agents often catch, especially if they're standing or sagging. But what they might miss is where that water is migrating, attics, crawl spaces, insulation. That's where we go deeper as home inspectors. Now, here's where home inspectors really stand out. Electrical hazards. Most agents don't think to ask about the electrical system unless something's sparking or doesn't work. But water damage inside a panel or corroded appliance wiring, that can create a fire risk. And it's invisible during a showing. HVAC and plumbing. These systems can be totally compromised without showing any symptoms. Flooded ducts, waterlogged insulation, or rusted blower motors might not cause problems until after closing, and that's and then it's on your client. Structural concerns. These ones are easy to miss. You can see them, but most of them are easy to miss. Foundation shifts, framing stress, subtle cracking. These don't always show up clearly, but they can point to major storm stress. So here's the reality. Most agents catch what they can see, but it's what you can't see that may wreck deals faster. These aren't just check boxes. We're talking about hazards that can cost your clients thousands, delay closings, or opening up to blowback after the sale. So while others are focused on surface level fixes, this is where you get ahead by knowing which risks are easy to overlook and making sure they're not ignored. And no, I'm not trying to scare you or anything like that, but after a major storm, especially something like we had last year, um, it can be difficult to navigate that. Um, I went out there for a few days just to help one of my inspector buddies up there, and it was difficult just to get into houses and look at them for insurance purposes, um, and it was almost not even worth it. It's like when you wreck a car, like how bad is this? Is this a total loss? And that's how most of the homes were there. So documenting damage for claims. This is where the partnership between inspectors and insurance agents really matter. And not a lot of home inspectors have that relationship with insurance agents. I feel that a lot of inspectors are standoffish when they should actually be building that relationship to understand what the insurance needs and what they don't, so we don't step our boundaries. From our side, we document thoroughly photos, videos, moisture readings, and detailed reports that spell out what is affected, how badly, and what risks are present. The goal is to create a clear, neutral record that clients and their carriers can rely on. We can also walk the client through what we found so they're not left guessing, especially when it comes to what's urgent and what's cosmetic. So, Sean, from the insurance side, how important is it that kind of documentation when you're helping a client file a storm-related claim?
When it's a storm-related claim, we want to usually have a roofer come out there and check, look, see what it's going to be. That's the biggest thing we see for the roofer. Document everything that's going on, and also have a conversation with your insurance agent first before you file a claim. I've seen several times where people want to say, "Hey, the roof's old. I just want to get replaced." It has to be what's called a covered peril. It has to be wind. It has to be hail. It has to be documented as that. One of the things you can help your customers out with too, and I'm sure you've seen the news, is there's a lot of different out-of-state roofers that are knocking on doors right now
Yeah.
and saying, hey, they're pulling a claim, statistically off Google. Insurance companies are wise on that. If you have a hail claim, you're going to know pretty much that you've got something. There's going to be some torn shingles in the yard, maybe some, shingles that are displaced. They're going to see something, possibly a water leak. You're going to know pretty much right away that you've had some hail damage. So make sure you document when it is, what was the date, what was the occurrence. That's the first thing the insurance company is going to ask is, hey, what exactly happened? And we're looking at, and also get a local roofer that you recommended. Talk to Josh. I'm sure he's got a lot of list of roofers that he can get you in touch with. You also make sure somebody is bonded and insured. And why is it important to have local? There's a lot of storm chasers, especially come during the summertime. And Five on Your Side, which is a local TV station, both in Fayetteville and in Raleigh, has done documentation on there. Sometimes they start out great during the neighborhood, but the last couple of houses in the neighborhood, they pick up and leave and sometimes don't finish, or the work's not done correctly. Another thing that you can watch out with your customers, if they offer a free roof, that is a red flag because every homeowner has a deductible. So you want to kind of see what that's going to be. Another big thing to look at too, and he talked a lot about with mold. Most homeowners policies only cover $5,000 for mold. If there is water damage, the clock starts ticking, you got to get them in right away, because every single policy, whether it's State Farm, Nationwide, the homeowner has a duty to prevent future loss. So if there's an error, you have a storm, a lot of times you'll see, especially at the coast, they put the tarps up very quickly to prevent water intrusion. You can actually void your policy if you're not taking the right steps and agreeing upon there. So that's
So does
another
that,
thing.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Does that mean to have a wind and water and fire mitigation company out to help get that set up and start it?
That you can get it great. You can also get a roofer to put a tarp up there pretty quickly. Sometimes homeowners would do it themselves. That's another thing that you can look at doing. Also, if you're listing a home, we see this a lot down at the beach, is it vacant? That's another thing insurance companies ask. Make sure your insurance company knows that it's going to be vacant. Like if somebody's died, an estate issue, because you have to notify them within 30 days of a change of occupancy. And that gets a lot of homeowners. Also in the Triangle area where you have a lot of high-end people that are making lots of money in RTP, they may have a second home. Well, I haven't thought about what I'm going to do with it yet. It's in that nice little fine print that you're required to notify of material change or it can void the policy. Water losses is another big thing. We see those a lot with kitchens. People forget to get that slow leak. If it's insurance has to be sudden accidental. That is the definition for insurance. So if you're talking to any of your customers, there has to be an event. It has to be sudden, it has to be accidental. You can't, cause issue to yourself. That's fraud. It can't be like a slow leak that's been going on for 6 months. That's another thing. Well, hey, I'm just going to wait about it. And next thing you know, hey, there's this black spots that are coming up the home inspector found in the kitchen. The wallpaper's starting to peel back. We've known about that for a while. That's going to be out of pocket on the homeowner. Does that kind of help out a little bit there, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, to kind of give you some ideas, some things to look at. Another big thing with getting homes ready are decks. A lot of times, if the railing's not secure, that can be something that can be an issue, especially if you're going to do showings. Last thing you want to do is a rainy day and an elderly customer comes to look at the house and they fall off the back deck because the deck gives way.
Yeah,
especially
that'll definitely be on the inspection report.
Yeah. But those are some of the things too as well. Are there any questions we have, or I can wait until later? Did I answer all that? Do you want to, Josh?
Yeah, no, that was good. Yeah, I've got about this slide and then 4 more after this, and then
Okay.
we'll switch over. Awesome, thank you for that. So, what happened there? There we go. So when hurricane flood damage hits, most clients aren't sure where to start, and that overwhelm can lead to missteps or bad decisions. So our job is to break it down clearly, what needs immediate attention and what can be planned for down the line. And obviously, you just heard Sean say that that you have to notify the insurance right away. So urgent repairs are typically your safety items, things like roof damage, electrical hazards, structural shifts, or mold from water intrusion. These have to be addressed first. Whether the client is staying in the home or trying to sell it, this is where documentation really matters for claims. And Sean, I know you talked a little bit about timing, but can the scope affect this coverage? So say somebody has a flood in their home and they have a home inspector come out just to document it. Would it be wise to go straight to the insurance carrier before they even have a home inspector come out? Or, can they take that day or two to have the home inspector come out to provide documentation?
Excellent question. It depends on what type of flood it is. If you're down at the coast and you're having a flood with a storm, FEMA requires you file a claim within 30 days or it voids the policy. That gets a lot of people, especially down at the coast as a vacation home, you have to file a claim. Now with FEMA, you can file as many claims as you want to and does not affect your rate until you become a repetitive loss. So that's something else that happens. And usually the home insurance does not see the FEMA claim. So that's another thing too. If you have a water loss, let's say One of the biggest ones we see are dishwashers.
Mhm.
You know, they come loose. The hoses, one of the biggest thing the homeowner can also do to prevent having a call to me is from the washer and dryer and also the dishwasher. Take away those rubber hoses. I'm sure Josh can tell you, put the metal ones in. You cost you $10 more, but those rubber hoses, about 5 to 10 years, they always burst for the hot water. And I see so many claims, you know, don't ever get a rubber hose. Um, but if you've got, you know, water loss, you know, if you have an insurance broker or agent, call them first and they can basically guide you. Okay, what is the best thing to do here? I always start with there. If you call the insurance company directly, they are required to take an information down, put a loss, and put it on the history, whether you file a claim or not. Now that can also hurt you as a seller's agent. Why is that? Because there's what's called a clue report, which is claims loss underwriting. And every single insurance agent in the state of North Carolina has access to that system. And it's run by LexisNexis, which is owned by Experian. So y'all know about credit reports. Well, they keep all of that for not only for the property, but also for the property owner. So if there are some zero payouts before we can write a policy, we got to have the buyer has to talk to their, realtor and say, hey, what's going on here? And sometimes the sellers don't want to disclose that. But that is public record. They have to. So that's another thing. You want to see if that's something worthwhile to do. Also, if a home, let's say they've already got a wind loss, like Josh said, they had a storm damage, and then 6 months later, that dishwasher, comes loose and floods. Well, they can still have a paid out claim, but what it's going to do is the property has 2 claims within a year. So that's going to limit anybody that wants to buy the property from getting it, because all the insurance companies want to have documentation, make us have that. And some companies right now have clean in 36 as their rules. So they have to have no claims within 36 months. They won't write it. If they have 2 claims, even if you're buying the property, they may decline to offer the coverage. So that's something that has changed recently in the last year that a lot of realtors are not aware of. So they look at 2, and sometimes I'll counsel some customers say, hey, I'm going to sell this house. Okay, well, don't file any claims because the seller can see. And I see a hand up. Is that for me, Kate?
It is. I
Okay.
don't know that I necessarily have a question, but I'm just kind of baffled by that because what are people supposed to do? Like if they have some issue that happens to them and it is their intention to sell, but let's say it's a roof issue or something like that, that would be pretty pricey. Is the expectation that they do one of 2 things? They either eat it and like pay for it in full on their own, or they decide not to report it and therefore continue to sell, or do they just decide not to sell? What is the workaround for people in that situation?
Yeah, I think there's a couple points there. One, if it's just the roof, they may want to file the claim, get it ready, because in order to sell that property, and I'll go in the presentation, some companies are going as low as 10-year-old roofs now, or 15 or 20. So you have to have that. What I'm talking about is repetitive loss. That can actually hurt. So what it is somebody with a little calculator, 1,000 miles away, is looking at the property and deciding and telling the agent whether they can write it or not. And they're looking at the numbers. So what the insurance company looks at, if a property has multiple losses, okay, what are we getting on? And there's some areas, for instance, we call it the hail arc. It goes from Fuquay-Varina and Raleigh over to Clayton. It always gets the bad hailstorms. And there's also some areas in near Charlotte is another big area that gets a lot of wind damage, and the pricing accordingly to that. So that's something to factor in. And again, if you've got an issue or got a question, have the customer talk with their insurance broker. Or if you want to give me a call, and sometimes Josh will just say, hey, I got a what if. How do we look at this? And I have a customers look at that and, is this something I want to do? I had a realtor give me a call and they say, hey, we got a high-end home and we're not getting any options. What's going on? Looked at it. It was a 23-year-old roof. They took it off the market. They put it back on with the roof and actually got $20,000 more than what they originally had listed for. But they could not qualify with any insurance company because it was a 23-year-old roof. Does that make sense? So there's severe repetitive loss. So if they've got multiple loss, especially in a 5-year period, that hurts the building. Now, there are some companies that will write it, but what they do is they charge a lot more money. And so that would be out of the standard market. That's going to be your State Farm, your Nationwide, your Allstate. It'd be somebody like Lexington you haven't heard of before. Also, that homeowner that's going to be selling that house, Kate, and let's say you want to help them find another house. That claims and loss history report also follows them to their new home. And it's like a credit report. It stays on there for 5 to 7 years. So sometimes I'll sit down with the customer and say, hey, you've already got this one big loss. The $5,000 dishwasher repair, pay out of pocket. Don't put it on the record. And you've got $1 million home and they're looking at it and they may pay, over the 5-year period. Otherwise, they're going to probably maybe pay $10,000 or $15,000 more. It makes sense to go ahead and pay that out of pocket. Does that make sense?
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate that.
No worries.
So let's talk about long-term upgrades. So these include improvements for like better drainage, reinforced roofing, or window upgrades for wind resistant. Not always urgent, but but smart to budget for, especially if the home has already been impacted once. And then we'll talk about red flags with do-it-yourself. These come up a lot post-storm. Quick pack jobs, unpermitted fixes, or cover-ups that can backfire during a second round of damage or during the claims process. And here's a question for you, Sean. Do you ever see these affect the payout or policy terms when you have these do-it-yourself repairs, or they hire somebody that's not licensed?
Excellent question. So workmanship is never covered on insurance policy. So if they did a bad job, like let's say you hire a plumber and he does a bad job, that's not something you're usually gonna be able to file on a homeowner's policy unless, let's say that the pipe burst. And then what they do is they subrogate, they go against the plumber. Now, what the homeowner can do is make sure that the plumber has valid insurance. Do they have a general liability? They have a workers' comp, and you can file against that plumber's insurance. I just helped one of my customers who has 10 landlords here in Raleigh, and he had that issue where the plumber goes, "Oh crap," and he was in the other room. That's not a good thing to hear. And we were able to help him file with the plumber's insurance because he made an error on fixing a pipe and it wasn't exactly where it needed to be, and tried to make one of those pipes, just make it work with some PVC pipe, and instead of getting a new piece, and it didn't work very well. So we're able to help out the customer, get them the loss of rents to as well, get the property repaired, the subsequent damage. But as far as do it yourself, most insurance companies don't care unless it's something where there's an issue. So there's that would be something more of a finance with the bank, or something that Josh could find, or something would qualify in there. But as long as it meets code and everything's good, we're not caring. Now, if it doesn't meet code, and I know there's one example, I wish I had a picture I could show you where it was leaning with the supports for the deck. That's going to be an issue there. But most insurance companies, as far as do it yourself repairs, we're not worried about it unless it's going to be workmanship. That's where an issue. So as long as it's there, urgent repairs are very important. Part of your policy is you have to maintain that home in good working order. So you got to replace it when it's time. You got to update the plumbing, the HVAC, change out the filters. That's another thing that can save you a lot of time. If you've got, you're going to sell the property, make sure that you go out and change the air filter. I'm sure Josh can tell you that all the time. I've had a couple of times people call me and they're doing showings during the summer, and what happens? HVAC goes out because that air filter is so clogged. And then they got a huge repair. I mean, that's just something it's easy to see. And of course, a buyer can see that if it's covered in paste. That's something else you can also do.
Yeah, and that brings up my next point here is risk of investor flips. So when investors swoop in after storms and put lipstick on a problem, or like everybody likes to say, lipstick on a pig, that new floors, the fresh paint, and no real repair underneath, we help clients see past that shine. And really get to know what they're walking into. So the goal here isn't to scare anyone. It's to guide you and your clients through the process with clarity and strategy, whether it's keeping, selling, or buying the home after a storm.
I say something real quick, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, with investor flips, one of the things that we've noticed, and a lot of things have happened, is when they go and flip it and they put LVP flooring down, and we find termite damage in the support beams. So make sure your home inspector is looking at termite. They kind of basically, like you said, put lipstick and hide that, and then they find that, of course, that's a big issue. If it's infested with termite or wood-burning ants or something else, it's going to cause the flooring to start to, what would you call, bow, I guess, Josh, the best way to put it. So,
Yeah.
Especially in the property flip, have a good home inspector. Make sure he's going in that crawl space. Make sure he's going in that attic. We find so many things that look great. Or, another thing, it starts having the walls start bowing. That's another issue too, as well. And that stuff's not going to be covered on the home insurance policy.
Yeah, that's scary.
What an
Yeah.
insect is not, but that is a great thing, great point there too, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that. So let's talk about future mitigation and client education. So when we talk about recovery, we also need to talk about prevention. Helping clients think a step ahead before the next storm hits is one of the most valuable things we can do as inspectors, agents, and even insurance companies. So let's start with wind mitigation reports. We don't typically see this in the Raleigh area, but these are formal evaluations that assess how well a home can withstand high winds, looking at the roof system, connection hardware, and impact resistant windows, and much more. So down the coast, these are common, especially in Florida, um, along the ocean area. So, and they can lead to major insurance discounts when the right features are in place. I don't ask me about the discounts. I'm not your guy. That's why Sean is here for that one.
I can help out with that. And something to ask about when you're realtor, looking at, ask if they have a fortified roof. There's a certificate, looks like, like your little kid, graduated from preschool or something else. It's fortified, it has a year. Now, the fortified roof costs usually 25 to 30% more to put on a house. And they'll also put the fortified windows, and that's added mainly for what's called the storm or wind damage. You can actually use the one previously for the seller, for the new buyer. Now, the fortified has a time constraint on it too as well. So it usually only goes for 5 or 10 years, and that credit falls off. It can be anywhere from a 10 to 35% credit on the wind coverage only. So at the coast, a lot of times you have two policies. You have a wind policy and you have a standard policy for that home. It does not affect the standard policy because that is excluding wind. So that is something right there. So it's basically called a fortified roof. And if the homeowner did it, they're going to know about it because it would cost a lot more money to do. Also, there are credits that the seller can get if they meet a certain income requirement with the North Carolina Joint Underwriters Association. They'll give up to $5,000 if you want to replace the roof. Basically pays for the upgrade to fortified. They still have to pay for the cost of the roof. So that is something else that a homeowner, if they're looking at possibly selling, they've been there for a while. It has limited to primary and secondary dwellings only. So as investment property, it's not eligible with the state. But the state has been running that, and it's up to a $5,000 grant that the homeowner can get. So if anybody's dealing with the coast and wants to look at that, there are some income limitations. If your seller is somebody that's making over 100 grand a year, don't even bother applying for it. But if it's a little old lady that's in her 80s and a older home, she may be able to qualify for that, and that'll pay up to 30 to 35% of the roof cost. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So let's talk about drainage fixes next. And this is one of the things that if you have any home inspector, this is where they should be super knowledgeable. It's one of the things that we have to know, especially around the Raleigh, Fayetteville area, are drainage fixes. And they should be able to give you an idea of what needs to be done. So after every major storm, we see the same issues: water intrusion from clogged gutters, poor grading, or faulty downspouts. And those are just a couple of examples. These things might seem small, but they're often what causes mold, structural rot, or basement flooding. Fixing drainage is low cost, high impact move for storm prevention. And a good example is here on my personal property. My house is almost 20 years old, and I noticed um, I've got an underground drainage system for our gutters, and they used corrugated pipe, which is it's flexible, it moves and things like that. They didn't use PVC smooth walled, and I knew right away that the system was just going to be clogged. Nobody's going to clean that out. And I took one of the gutters off at the beginning of the year, and I could literally stick my entire arm all the way up to my elbow, and still was grabbing pine needles and dirt and roots and everything. So the first thing I did was I cut that off and put extensions on, and that right there, that I think it was $100 to get the extensions. I've got a ton of downspouts on my house, um, but that saved me quite a few $1,000s of um, water damage in the crawl space. So that's just an example for you. Next, let's talk about storm prep upgrades. This is where clients can get ahead with smarter materials and systems like impact windows, roof reinforcements, backup power, like Sean was stating. Not all of these are cheap, but some do influence coverage premiums. And finally, client education. This is where we wrap it all together, giving homeowners the tools to prepare checklists, evacuation plans, supply kits, and seasonal maintenance. It's not just about overwhelming them, it's about giving them control. Because when clients feel prepared, they're not just protecting their home, they're protecting their peace of mind. All right, so this is where you as a realtor can really shine, not just during the offer and closing, but in the storm, in the storm aftermath, when leadership, speed, and clarity really matters. Let's break down your game plan. Communicate proactively. Get ahead of the client's concern. Check in quickly after a storm hits. Reach out to your inspector and start lining up assessments so you're not stuck in backlog. And not just your inspector, maybe have your clients reach out to their insurance agency. The sooner we evaluate, the faster your deal or listing can stabilize. Leverage inspection data. Use our reports, photos, moisture readings, and documentation to clearly show what's damaged, what's safe, and what's in question. It gives your clients the facts and you the ability to guide them through negotiations or disclosures confidently. Facilitate insurance claim. This is where working with someone like Sean makes life easier. And question for you, Sean, maybe you can speak on how an agent can help make sure clients gather the right documentation before the adjuster shows up.
Excellent. So the adjuster is going to ask, okay, what's going wrong? Do you have any quotes from any plumbers, electricians? Also, are you going to be inside the house, or are you planning on leaving? One of the things I have a conversation with the customer and kind of explain to them too as well is, if you've got small children, if you've got somebody that's elderly and you've got a mold issue, you don't want to keep them inside the house. It's better to go ahead and put them in a hotel. I know sometimes that is something that they don't want to deal with, but they're very susceptible to some things there too. Another big thing is, if you got anything that's going to be in the area, you want to, small items, move it away. Prepare your house. People forget a lot of times, even if they're only damaged inside the kitchen, don't leave your great grandmama's diamond ring upstairs on the table right next to the bed. People are going in and out constantly through your house, and some of them are paid minimum wage with some of these contractors, and the contractors have a lot of turnover. So that's another thing also to happen. Now, they usually have a bond in case something goes missing, but why put something out there that's going to advertise what's there? So make sure you prepare the house, look around. Is there anything out there that you don't want to have seen? So that's another thing too, that a lot of times homeowners don't even think about. Oh, I just want to deal with the house. Well, what else do you have up there that's going to be an issue? If there's a certain area, one of the things they're going to do is probably turn off the power to that certain area if there's water damage. That's something Josh can also tell you about too as well. So if there's something, don't plug your iPhone into the areas very close to where the water damage is. Take it to a different area. Your laptop. You don't want to have anything that's going to have a power surge. Also, if in water remediation, they're going to bring some drying fans in. It's going to take a long time. It's going to basically suck all the moisture out of the area. People don't think about that. This is going to be something that's going to take several days. And they have to suck that out first before they can do any water damage remediation. So this is a process. Make sure, no, it's going to take a week or two sometimes for this damage.
Yeah.
Roof's pretty quick once they get it signed off because it's outside of the area. So that's one of the things to think about too. If you got childcare, start thinking about, okay, if I'm going to be out of the house, what am I going to do? And start preparing for those kind of things that are going to happen. Not only just getting the estimates, but what is your game plan going to be? Because it may be something that's bigger. Talk to the insurance agent. Also, a lot of insurance companies have an adjuster. That is your case manager that goes through the entire process. Ask them those questions. Ask them what you're looking at. If you have any children that are autistic or something needs special consideration, somebody who has emphysema or something else, the adjuster is not going to do that. Bring it up to them. Let them know if you have special consideration to have. And some of them are, they have it within the policy, they can have some flexibility. And always be nice to the adjuster. The previous person may have yelled at them. And people don't realize the adjuster has a range. And I've got some friends that are adjusters, and they tell me as soon as they got one that's calling and yelling at them, okay, there goes $500. There goes $500. What's the lowest I can pay out for this customer and still be within that range? Be friendly, be nice. Remember, you don't know what kind of day they've had. You may be having a horrible time. I tell customers, take a breath before you think about if you were that person, what you're dealing with. And realize it's going to take time. You have to get estimates. The other thing to think about too is if there is a bank loan on the house and it's over a certain amount and it's going to be paid to the customer has to get the bank to sign off if they don't want to pay the contractor directly. That's another thing that causes a lot of issues too. Hey, I got this check in a minute. I got to go to Wells Fargo and get them to sign off. North Carolina has a law that if it's over $5,000 and it's paid to the customer, the bank has to sign off on it because they have collateral in there. So that's another thing. So a lot of times I tell the customers, if you use their in-house provider, they can pay them directly. It's a lot less headache. Usually they'll give you 2 or 3 names. If you got motor mediation or something, a lot of times companies have that and it makes the process easier. But if you've got your friend you really want to use and you want to get the check directly to you and it's a large amount, be prepared. You're probably going to have to go down to your local bank and have them sign off on the claim. That's another thing they don't think about too, because that's made to protect the lender so people don't take the money and run.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to guiding your clients through the repairs. You don't need to be the one swinging the hammer. You just need to know who can. Help clients spot the urgent issues, connect with reputable contractors, and avoid do-it-yourself traps or investor flip disasters. And that's what I was talking about earlier, is that we can help flag those in our report, as well as help pass off our network that we have with vetted contractors and vendors and things like that. And then educate on mitigation. Even after the storm is over, your value continues. Share what you learn about drainage fixes, wind mitigation basics, and prep steps so clients are ready next time. And then realtors who know how to lead through disruption will will build trust that lasts well beyond the closing table. So, all right, before we wrap up, let's zoom out and take a look at the big picture. First, your leadership matters. After a storm, clients are looking for guidance. They're overwhelmed, they're emotional, and they're unsure of what comes next. Your ability to stay calm, because we all know agents can stay calm, communicate clearly, and bring the right professionals makes all the difference. You're not just helping those close a deal, you're helping people navigate uncertainty. And sometimes we all feel like therapists, right? Second, documentation is your weapon, from photos and moisture readings to inspection reports to getting vendor quotes. The more clarity that you give your clients, the less chaos they feel. This isn't just for buyer confidence, it's for protecting sellers, supporting claims, and keeping negotiations grounded in facts. Third, collaboration wins. Sean and I aren't just here to talk, we're here to be partners. You know, when inspectors and insurance align early, the client benefits every time. Faster claims, fewer gaps, more confidence. And fourth, mitigation is momentum. Don't let the value with the transaction help clients think ahead, whether it's damage fixes or roof reinforcements. That sets you apart as someone who doesn't just help, but also help protect that home. And finally, you don't have every answer. You don't need to. You just need to know who to call. That's what today is about, building a network that makes you stronger and your clients safer. So thank you, and final thoughts. And that's where the heart of it is. It's your leadership is what keeps everything moving when things feel uncertain. We covered a lot today, and I know every transaction, every storm, and every client brings new questions. So let's open it up. What's on your mind, whether it's process, prep, or pitfalls, we're here for it. After we dig into a few of your questions, I'll turn it over to Sean and share some insights from the insurance side. And one of the quotes that I came across while I was building this last month is, "Storms may shake a house, but your leadership keeps the deal grounded. Let's keep building smarter, stronger partnerships before, during, and after the storm." That's all I got. Questions, thoughts, gripes, complaints? Got a couple.
I have some questions, but I want to see if anyone else wants to chime in first. Oh, Yuka, what you got?
So the mitigation part, I understand it's very important to prevent the future damages. But I was wondering, so you would suggest a certain mitigation, let's say drainage fix or something like that. And would you refer a company, or your company can actually do something like the install the mitigation system? Because I don't know anybody who can do that.
Yeah. So it depends on what the homeowners looking at have done, you know, whether they need a contractor or a landscaping company. I do have vendors in my network that I recommend. If we do an inspection, we typically cannot make the repairs based on that inspection. But I do have a network of vendors that I trust and that I always push out to anyone that is looking for a specific vendor or anybody like that.
If I could also say too as well, Yuka, if it's an existing homeowner, you want to go through insurance. If it's a water damage, you have to use a licensed mold remediation contractor in order for them to pay. And they have to have certain certifications and everything else there too. So it's different if it's out, you know, in the landscape, you know, it's pretty much easier a lot there, but there are fewer water remediation companies. I think there's about 5 or 6 in each market that do it. They have all the requirements, the testing gear and everything else. So it is limited on what it is. And a lot of times the insurance company can refer you to ones that they've dealt with in the past. Also be careful if an insurance company says, you know, we haven't dealt with them. That's usually a nice way of saying they don't have a good reputation. So, or they they won't say they don't recommend, but there are some companies that do not do a good job. You know, I'll always look at their, reviews online. What do they have? Do they have, you know, the local, contractor association or something if there's an issue? And also talk to Josh. He deals with contractors all day long and can deal with some good ones that are there. And I see some names and I'm kind of like, ugh. And this one's going to be a hard one to deal with. So that's another thing too as well. It has to be licensed if you want the insurance company to pay, because it has to go through a procedure. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, yes. So probably always the best route is contact insurance agent first.
That's what I would recommend doing, and they can give you an idea what the best option is there going forward.
And if I want to use inspector, would it be the same as general home inspection that we usually order? I mean, for the sellers, how much would it be just to assess damage?
I think that's Josh, that's
Yeah,
more.
just a question, sorry.
Yeah. I guess it depends on the scope of work that you're looking for. You know, are you trying to get just an attic, roof, and crawl space inspection, or an entire home? You know, and it also is based on the age and square footage, things like that. So more or less, it's the scope of what you're looking for. Typically, when we come in for storm after the storm, we're doing attic, roof, and crawl spaces. So that ranges anywhere from $250 to $400, depending on the size of the home.
All right, thank you.
It looks like we've got a couple questions about can an insurance agent pull the claims report? Yes, they can. And that's something I do recommend, if they start seeing anything. Now, some insurance agents will share that with the customer, some will not. So if there's any issue, I always share it with my customers, and I'll bring the realtor in too as well. There is a privacy issue, so the buyer has to sign off and allow you to do that. I can't just talk to you directly. But that is something else they can do. And then if there's any issues there, like Josh gave a great example, putting lipstick on a pig. Everything looks brand new, but all of a sudden we see we've got a water damage loss mold and a zero payout. Did they fix it, or they just put nice set coat of paint on top of it and cover that on the wall? Because he can tell you, 6 months later that mold is going to grow right through that wall. So that's another thing to bring the home inspector back in. If there's issues that about, talk to your buyer clients. If there's insurance history, well, hey, there's been some water damage, repetitive. Does it have the old polybutylene pipes? That's something I don't think Josh has mentioned, but sometimes we're seeing that from the 1980s, early 90s. After they get to a certain age, those things they come apart and they quit. And that could be a big issue too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Lieber had wanted to say something, and then I'll get to you, Wendy.
Who's that?
Go for it.
Me?
No, Lieber.
Oh, okay.
No, maybe not. Okay, go for it, Wendy.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You're both very knowledgeable. I appreciate it. Sorry. So I have a future listing that had damage from Hurricane Helene. So my question is two parts. One, as the listing agent, what do I need to consider and pay attention to? And then the second part is I do know that they received money from FEMA. So I don't know if you all know of any restrictions on like if they even can sell, if they got FEMA money from FEMA, and they did rebuild the property. So thank you.
You want to start, Josh? You want me to go into it? Go ahead.
Yeah, mine will be pretty quick. So if they rebuilt, I guess the only thing that's going to come up is when they go to sell and that inspector goes in there and finds anything afterwards. You could possibly do like a pre-listing inspection if you were too worried about it, but if there's nothing showing in face, then I would just wait for this buyers to bring in their home inspector.
As far as the insurance, you want to make sure that it has a closed claim on the clue report. That's one of the big things. If you're the listing agent and you've got a brand new roof, put that on the listing. That's going to help you sell the house, because now insurance companies are rating by the roof year. And that's something that's changed over the last year that a lot of realtors don't know. So if you've got a brand new roof, put that on the listing. That helps the insurance agent, and also they get a lower rate on their insurance. Now they're still going to factor in the claim, but make sure that it's done, and say, hey, all work has been completed. Make sure that's disclosed. Go ahead.
So they filed a claim with insurance, but they received no insurance money. They only received money from FEMA. So is there something to close if they didn't get any money from their insurance?
Excellent question. So we've got a zero payout. Every single insurance company is going to know what that is. So you want to have that available to any buyer and say, hey, they didn't get money for insurance, but we got a FEMA grant. Here's the receipt that shows all the work that was done, because the insurance company is going to say, hey, there was a valid claim, but what was the work done? Let's say it's less than deductible, or may not be. Like if it's flood claim, they don't have flood insurance. So usually when a FEMA grant, it means a low income person or somebody like Western North Carolina, where the whole area has been declared a disaster area, they're eligible for FEMA grants. Usually FEMA money comes with a 1% interest rate. So when they're selling the house, a lot of times they will have to pay back that FEMA grant. So that's another thing too.
That's what I was worried about. They don't think they need to pay that back, but they will need to pay. Is there a certain time frame that they have to pay it back? Or like if they, obviously it's not even been a year and they're ready to sell.
Excellent question. If it was a loan or anything else there too, check with your closing attorney. They're the experts, and let them know, say, hey, this is what's going on here. How does this affect? What is it on here? What do they have? Because they may have where they have to pay back that loan. And sometimes they don't have any payment due for up to a year. So that's another thing to look at too. So if is it a grant or is it a loan? 90% of the time for a grant, you have to be indigent or very low income. So that's going to knock out a bunch of the houses. Most of them, if it's a business or second home, they're going to do either 1 or 2% interest rate, and they're going to want their money back. And you don't want to have a lien issue on the house either that the government's going to put on there. So always ask the closing attorney, let them know that that's there. Hey, here's what happened. Let them do their research for the title.
And so we usually don't even reach out to the closing attorney until we're under contract. So your suggestion would be to do that before we even list.
In this scenario, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Normally you don't need to, but in this scenario, yes, you want to get everything ready, because last thing you want to do is scare off a potential buyer.
We've got a question/statement in the chat, and I guess it's more of a statement. I'm curious what your response would be to this. It sounds like their microphone isn't working, but just had an experience where closing was moved back by 2 weeks and the insurance quote expired. Even without any storms, the issue was declined to insure the property. Is that common?
Okay, well, let's see if I can answer the best I can. Insurance quotes are good for 30 days. So if it goes past that 30 days, make sure that they're getting an update on the quote. Insurance guidelines are changing a lot right now, especially with roof years and other things there too. So, talk to your customer, make sure they've got that updated closing. It was not a storm, and there could be something else there with the issue. Also, sometimes we as agents can get exceptions with claims, but also has a deadline. So let's say I get an exception, let's say with Erie, to write the policy because it's got 2 claims on it on a previous homeowner they're buying the house. Well, my exception may be today, it may expire on June 15th. So that's another thing you want to think about too. If there's going to have something, communicate with the agent. You may want to move the closing up a little bit so you don't have that issue happen. Because after that 30 days, the agent has to go back to the company and ask again. Does that make sense?
It does. So if that were to happen and they had been previously approved by that given insurance company, and then it gets extended, so they missed their 30 days and they resubmit to that same company and it's then declined, what is the likelihood that if they go to a different insurance company that it would then be accepted? Or is there something in the system like across the board for all insurance agents where somehow that property or account has been flagged where everyone is then going to decline it? Is it like a company specific situation? I know it's kind of hard to say based on, us not knowing.
Well, exceptions are not shared with other companies. So that's one thing. Now the home buyer would have to go back and reapply again. I see sometimes that happens. Let's say, give an example, we do a quote for new construction It's in January. The construction gets moved back to June. We've got to redo the quotes. We got to look at it. Suppose the homeowner had a previous claim with with their old house. We have to get it reapproved all over again. That does not stop them. Now, there's also what's called the excess market. So if they can't get coverage anyplace else, we can also do the excess and surplus, or you can do the NCJUA. It's a carrier of last resort. So if you've got a property here that nobody wants to cover, it could be this doesn't have the updates. You can write a policy through the North Carolina Joint Underwriters Association. Now, it's not the best policy out there. It's a very basic, but it does allow the homeowner to at least have something to cover them. Does that make sense?
It does. I have a separate question.
Okay, shoot.
So what if someone is considering selling and we know that their roof is like older than 10 or 15 years or whatever that stipulation would be? And again, they want to sell, but what if they don't have the funds available to make that roof replacement? So then they're kind of stuck in limbo. Is there any workaround for that? Like, how would you, as an insurance agent, advise someone in that situation? And how would we know, like, whether it's going to be an issue in a transaction or not? Would it just depend on whatever insurance company the buyer selects? Which should they be proactive in as a seller and reach out to other insurance companies so that they can say, hey, when you go under contract, like, here's someone that might approve it. What would be your advice?
Excellent question. First, start with the home inspector. What is that roof and how does he say it? A lot of times they'll say, and Josh probably could say, hey, this has 10 years of life. Well, that's a 20-year, we know it's a 10-year-old roof. So that's one of the first things we look at. When you look at a roof, you can kind of tell it. You ever see a roof and it's kind of like sparkling? You see a little bit of light coming in, almost like diamonds on top of the roof. That's some of the pyrite in there. So with 3-tab shingle, as it gets older, it starts to darken and gets thinner. So if you start seeing a lot of lines going down the side of a roof, that tells you it's pretty much older. So that's another thing. So, but if you know it's the end of there, now, what I've heard from another homeowner that did here, the contractor actually took 1% down for one of the roofers here, and then they took a lien on the house, and then after closing, they were paid. Or do a home equity line, something like that with your bank. Sometimes people are doing that too as well. But that allows you to get that house sold. But if it's really bad off, it's going to limit who can buy it. And some insurance companies, especially for like investors or landlords, they'll allow them to buy the house as is and give them 30 days to replace the roof, excuse me. So that is another option, but that has to be signed off by the insurance company from day one. And they're going to ask a lot of questions. Usually there's a signed contract. The closing attorney handles that part of it too, and the realtor has to get involved. And it's already pre-approved who's going to be there, when they're going to start, and the money's already there. And the closing attorney pays for the roof out of the HUD statement. Does that help out? Those are some of the things that I've seen. I'm not a closing attorney. Always check with what your options are. Does that help? And actually, I've got a few slides. If we have time, I can go through, because it seems like we're having a lot of those same questions. Can I share that now, Josh?
Yeah, I'm all done.
Okay.
Please.
And that way I can kind of go through it and kind of show you some of the things that are
We got enough time,
Go
Kate?
ahead and start this slideshow real quick. See if I can share it. Okay. Can everybody see the slideshow now? Okay. And I'm going to go over a couple things about, what Josh said. Also, some other things too y'all probably want to see that's changed in the insurance market in the last 6 months to a year that's going to affect your buyers and sellers. This tells you a little bit about us. We got multiple markets. We can look around finding the best rate. I've been in business for 19 years. It'll be December, and it'll be 20. So it's hard to believe that. I'm going to get some gray hair. But so we helped out several different customers. And we have one of the biggest investment that your buyers are going to do, and sellers, probably the largest asset they've got. So, are they already looking for hidden things? This is one of the things Josh can really look out for. This actually is a home in the triangle. There's a copperhead right there on the door handle. kind of scary. You don't know what you're going to find. So really good to have a good home inspector. So here are some of the things that are affecting homeowners right now. Inflation, the cost of repair and materials are up on 100% on some items. You know, everything has gone up. The insurance rates have not kept pace with inflation. So we're going to see, as the insurance industry as a whole, the homeowners rates are going up. You know, of course, budgets are stretched thin. Deferred maintenance is another big thing that insurance companies are looking at. Josh did a great job of looking at that. Hey, you know, if you don't fix that tire that's going bald on your car, eventually it's going to go flat or burst. So, you know, higher cost of homeowners. Carriers are also increasing coverage limits to match inflation. You've seen everything pretty much. If you bought a house in 2019 and you look at what it's worth now, it's probably worth 100% more if you're going to sell it. Increased costs for the beach property. That's another thing that's going to be happening up. They got approved for a 40% increase with the wind. Now at the beach, NCJUA has 90% of the wind market. Most of their competitors are withdrawing. So Frontline and some other companies. So they're kind of locked in. They're the only game in town right now. You know, we talked about claims history on the property. Even a zero payout, they want to know what's going on. What's the inquiry? We talked about the storm with the blackout period in case there is any time where during the summer with storms coming in there. And of course, limited or higher costs. Those are some of the things hitting them. When you're looking at a property, there's three values that everybody has. Insurance is going to be looking at the building only. So we're not caring about the land. Of course, you're looking at location, location, location. Tax usually is a little bit less. Now, some of them are increasing right now. Okay, this is something that is very important. You're going to sit down with your home inspector and look at. Roof age is the biggest thing right now. Most of North Carolina, a lot of towns and cities were built from about 1996 to about 2009. Most of the inventory has been built for most areas. So what does that mean? The natural life of that roof is basically expiring. It's either 10, 15, 20 years. If it's a 3-tab shingle, the requirements are going to be tougher and it's not going to last as long. It may only be 10 or 15 years. I know Progressive right now is doing a 6-year for their roof company. So we've got a lot of referrals from them where it has to be less than 6 years old. Last update of the HVAC is another thing every insurance company is going to ask. The heating and air, how old is it? You know, most of them last usually about 15 to 16 years. You know, electrical, does it have circuit breakers or fuses? If you open up the circuit breaker box and it looks like, you know, a Christmas tree with little lights on it, that means it's really old. That's going to hurt the ability of what companies will write it. It doesn't have the circuit breakers. Of course, plumbing update, cast iron, PVC, copper, any leaks. One of the biggest things we're seeing that's hurting realtors right now is attractive nuisances. Have they put a swimming pool in the backyard? We saw a ton of those go during COVID. Do they have a trampoline? Get rid of it. That's going to hurt. Who's going to ride it? Yeah, about 50% of the insurance companies will not write a home with a trampoline on it. And why is that, Kate? That's something to think about. Well, it's not your kids. It's going to be your neighbor's kids that are coming over. And I can pick on myself. When I was 13 years old, we had a water moccasin that was underneath my neighbor's trampoline, and my buddy and I were jumping off the roof onto the trampoline to see if we could go and smash that head on that copperhead. And we'd fly off that. Thought it was so cool until one of the neighbors saw it. I was just a 13-year-old boy. And it's amazing what teenagers will do, especially guys when they're egging on each other. That's just something that I did. And of course, I'd look at risk now. I'm like, gosh, that was a really bad risk then. You know, do they have a zip line? Do they have a swimming pool? That's going to limit, because those are attractive nuisances and increase the cost, and also is going to increase the insurance cost as well, and certain requirements. You know, usually they want to have a fenced-in yard. It has to have netting. So that's some of the things. These are what, if you want to take a picture of this, the screen, this is what everybody's going to ask about. So before I go forward, anything else for the next slide? Okay.
No, I just want to say that's so true about the trampoline, though. When we got a trampoline as kids, it was like all of a sudden, these neighborhood kids that we had never talked to before were like coming over. You're like, excuse me. My parents were not into it for that exact reason. It's such a liability if they get injured.
Exactly. They get
on
injured
your
and they
insurance.
file a claim against the homeowner, and they will do it in a heartbeat. Some of the things as far as insurance companies, people don't realize Elon Musk has this wonderful satellite program now. They can get down to the granular level. Somebody in Erie, Pennsylvania, and Hartford, Connecticut can actually go down and see the granular level of the roof and not even leave their desk. It's amazing what's available. So insurance companies can see a lot more in the last year than they ever have before. 50% of all home claims are roofs right now. 100% of home insurance carriers are losing money on homeowners right now for last year, for 2024. Nobody made any money. They paid out more than was coming in, and that's why they're raising some rates. So that's 100% of the industry. Now they're starting to get a little bit better. I know Travelers has gotten more profitable. Erie is also another one too that's gotten a little bit better. Some of them are still having large losses paying out. Most of North Raleigh, Fayetteville also had a big area. 1998 to 2008 was the big. Of course, we had 2009, we had the financial crisis. And of course, y'all are in real estate know that a lot of the inventory was not built. A lot of new construction didn't come around really until later, till about COVID, some things started coming back. May need to replace that roof before listing, especially on your higher end homes. The bigger the home, the bigger the cost for the roof. That's going to defer buyers. Depending on what roof year, 10 to 20 years, depending on the carrier. Now, some companies are actually offering an actual cash value on the roof now. Erie is one of them. There's a few others that are doing that, but that may run into some issues with the lender, because actual cash value means it depreciates the roof over time. So the older it is, the less money you get. But it still allows them to write a policy on that older roof. But basically, the homeowner acknowledges they're going to be paying for the whole roof out of pocket. But if it's an FHA loan, I've heard from some lenders, they will not allow that. So that's another thing too. Unknown roof age is automatic decline with every single carrier. I don't have one single company that they tell me that we don't know what the roof year is. What they tell me to do is say, hey, call Josh, call the home inspector. What's the roof year? What is the easiest way we can see? Especially if they got signs of wear and tear. Remember, they can use that nice little satellite and go right on down. If the roof looks like, for instance, here's some curling of the shingles. That's a big issue because the water gets inside there. You can have water damage in the attic space and not even know it. Here's our attractive nuisance that we talked about: skateboard ramps, pools. There's a trampoline. You can see it's got the netting in there. And also you can see where somebody's actually put some lines in there to hold the trampoline in place. Maybe they had somebody like Kate or myself that was trying to see what they could do to how far we could go on the trampoline. There's different types of homeowners policies. The HE7 is the best the customer can get. It's guaranteed replacement cost no matter what it costs. It's really good for the higher end home. Also, if you're selling higher end homes, be prepared. The insurance is going to move slower now. A lot of people don't realize that. They're going to ask a lot more questions. They're going to want to have the agent inspect it, look at it. Well, think about it. If you got a $2 million on the line versus a $250,000 house, which one are you going to spend more time with? If that house burns to the ground, you've got a $2 million loss plus maybe $1 million in contents, loss of use. It could be $4 million easy. So if you've got a larger in home, make sure they're getting that in advance, because they're going to ask a lot more questions. Also, a lot of insurance companies now are requiring the auto in order to write the homeowners. They will not write the home by itself anymore because it's not profitable. Insurance companies we're making money on the auto. We're going to see what happens with tariffs and parts. So the HO3 is the standard form. Replacement costs up to a limit. What that townhome, is it a condo or is it a home? It depends on what it has in the HOA form. Always talk to realtors about that. Let your homeowner know that. Hey, is it a condo? Do they only have to cover the interior walls and fixtures, or the HOA? Of course, mobile homes. HO2 is an older home. So that's kind of things right there. House flippers, tail down. We can help out with those two as well as for insurance. So if you got somebody that's a buyer that wants to buy an old granny house, they don't qualify for traditional homeowners because they've got to go in there. They got to put new electrical in. They got to update all of the plumbing, update everything that's in there. We can do a builder's risk too as well and help them out. That's something that we're looking at now. That also affects the financing too. So they want to have a conversation with their lender. I have several homes, especially inside the Beltline in Raleigh, and other areas where it's an older home and they go in and they completely gut it. Well, it's not lived as a homeowner, so it cannot be a home at that time period. Of course, we do landlords too as well. There's some companies will write a home under construction as well as a homeowner's policy if there's a hand's distance apart with the contractor. So I can answer more questions about that. Everybody was asking about flood. Here's the definition for a flood for FEMA. Has to be general and temporal or partial or complete inundation of 2 or more acres of 2 or more properties normally dry. That's a big thing. So if you were the only one that got flooded by the storm and nobody else around you got flooded, you can have a FEMA policy and they will not pay out. Has to be 2 separately titled structures. You notice I said structures, not lots, structures. Overflow of inland or tidal waterways. Mudslides are not covered. So that's what got a lot of people in Western North Carolina. If has to be mud flows, has to be water. If it's more solid and looks like grits, they're not going to cover it. Okay. It has to be unusual rapid accumulation or runoff of surface water from any source. Another thing too is the water is coming from an exterior source as a flood. Now you can have, the homeowner can have like a water pipe burst or something. That's covered under what's called sewer and drain on the homeowners. That's a different coverage. Collapse or sinking land on a shoreline, result in rapid erosion. We see that a lot of times happen. Another thing that you'll see too is that the home doesn't pay out until that home falls in the water. So you ever seen those homes they've got up there? They look perfectly preserved right there at the beach and they won't do anything to them. They're going to wait till the next storm comes and knocks it out. Then they collect their money from FEMA. But if all the grounds underneath it's gone, they don't get any money. They have to wait till that storm knocks it down. That's another thing too. Now you can purchase with FEMA, you can get up to $250,000 for a homeowners, non-residential up to $500,000. FEMA flood program is to get you back in your home. It's never built to replace a home. That's one of the big things that's different. Your contents are depreciated. You do not get full value of your contents on any policy. And you also have to file within 30 days of a loss if you want to get any money. There's going to be a system. There's going to be contractors. One of the fun things about flood is you're going to have a separate adjuster for your house versus your contents. You got to love government. One of the big things you can also do for sellers, if they've got an active flood policy that's been maintained for many years, is what's called grandfathering. This is something y'all probably want to write down. Let me go back into the grandfathering real quick. So as long as you could have a policy and a homeowners at the beach, oceanfront is paying $650. The neighbor right next door is paying 20 grand on the same street. But one of them has a continuous flood policy. They have an annual increase of $25 and 5%. It'll take many, many years for them to get that. You can actually sell that at closing in consideration and keep the same flood policy. So that is something you can really help out. Or if you got some areas along a river, along the Cape Fear or something else there too. So if you know that the home is in a flood zone, usually it's AE, as a buyer's agent, ask the seller, hey, do they have an active flood policy? Get that moved over because you're going to be able to save. What if you've got $20,000 you can save your buyer client a year? Is that going to help you close the house a lot quicker? So that's something else to ask about. But if you don't ask, you don't know about it. Now, one of the things to maintain grandfathering is they can't change the footprint. So if they add a deck, they lose it. They can't change the actual physical shell. They can do whatever they want inside the house, but they can't change the footprint of the house in order to keep grandfathering. Does that make sense? Who's able to purchase, U.S. residents with legal status? Unless it's a loan closing, there's 30-day waiting period. No federal land. You can also buy flood insurance through the private market too as well. FEMA does not rate on claims. The private market does. The private market was cheaper last year. Now it's flipped. On the most part, FEMA is cheaper because the rates, you can have as many claims as you want to. They'll also raise up for low income, they'll raise the houses up. If you have a certain amount of money, though, they're not going to pay for it. There's little grandpa right there. Big at Waters Act, they've got something for severe repetitive loss. They'll do 25% annual increases. Now, if you have that grandfather policy, it's at $650 and 25%. That's not that bad, $125, $130 increase. But if you have a lapse in coverage anytime, you lose that grandfather status. They're also checking to see about second homes. They have to verify it every single year. This is second home. FEMA's going to send them a letter. And the homeowner, if they don't do it, they're going to raise the rate to an investment grade. So that kind of shows you Eastern North Carolina. I grew up in Eastern North Carolina, so I've had many floods that we've had. Also, if you live at the coast, a lot of times you're going to have free policies for the homeowner. You're going to have a flood policy, you're going to have a standard homeowners policy, and you're also going to have a wind policy. The wind policy is through the North Carolina Joint Underwriters Association. If the homeowner can get it directly from the carrier, I always tell the customers get it, even if it's more expensive. Because the carrier, if you have a claim, you're going to move a lot faster than through NCJUA. The NCJUA is a government-private partnership that's owned by the state. And of course, we got, homes sold. We talked about that. You have to be participating in the community. So that's something that's happened, especially Topsail Island, one of the biggest areas. So if anybody working down in Topsail Island and down there, they're having a lot of issue with flood. There's certain areas that, if the house is damaged more than a certain amount of it, you can't rebuild that lot. So you may have an empty lot next to a homeowner's lot. There's some other areas too, but that's one of the big islands that are having some issues at the ends. And of course, there's 100 communities that still do not participate. They have to participate in order to qualify for it. If you don't participate, they can get up to $40,000. It's very limited for the building. This is my contact information. I got my old address and you changed that. But, if you have more questions about what's going on with the insurance market, if you've got a what if, give me a call. I'll be happy to help out, your buyers or your sellers. What's going on? What can I do to mitigate this? Is this something I'm looking at? I've had several customers call me and say, hey, I'm looking at this house. What is the claims history on there? A lot of times I'll get that. They can give it to their realtor, go back and say, hey, this one right here's got a loss. What happened here? And the seller doesn't want to tell you. What do they put on all of those listings? If you're a buyer's agent, no disclosure, no disclosure. They love to do that. And of course, as a seller, they'll say, what do you want to do? You don't want to list anything that's going to hurt your, buyer from buying. Does that make sense? What questions do we have for the group? Anything? I know I've gone over a lot.
We probably have time for like one more question if you guys have any. One of the ones that I had, Sean, was, I know we were talking about them reaching out to an insurance agent to know like whether they should do something out of pocket or whether it should be replaced. How do you ask that question without kind of flagging your property as having been potentially hit or in needing one of those things, since things can stay? Is it like only once a claim is formally filed that it goes on a report for people to reference? Or should people be calling their insurance agent being like, hypothetically, and then asking the question?
First of all, if you're the property owner, let the property owner call the insurance agent, say, hey, what do we have here? What's this going to be? How's it going to be affected? There may be something where the insurance company says, hey, we're not going to renew that policy. So always ask them what's going to happen. I have a lot of customers say, hey, hypothetically, if I file this, how's it going to help out? What do I need to think about? Especially my property owners, they have multiple properties. They've got a beach house, they got a house here, maybe a rental house. What you don't realize is that clue report follows you, the property owner, for all the houses. So if you were to get a new policy with any insurance company, they're going to see it. So that's something else we'll look at too as well. So always have that conversation. And then if they're a good insurance agent or broker, they can help you kind of guide what the best thing is to do there. That's why you really want to have a good trusted advisor that knows what they're doing, that's got some experience too as well. Does that help out, Kate?
It does. Thank you both so much for your time today. This was so valuable. It answered a lot of questions. I also feel like it raised a lot of more questions. I definitely feel like I'll be coordinating with insurance agents a lot more proactively for people, just so that these aren't surprises. So thank you both for your time and for being such a resource. I'm sure it's something we'll continue to do. So thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you. I will make sure to include both of your contact info when this recording goes out, but I appreciate both of your time and starting your day with us.
Thanks again.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. Talk to you
All right.
soon.
Take care.
Bye.